Road Accident Fund says it has successfully stopped fraudulent claims valued at over 2.6 billion rand over the last 3 financial years. The RAF says during this reported period, there's been 32 arrests and the highest sentence was a 12-year direct imprisonment of an attorney. Collins Letsoalo, who is the CEO of the Road Accident Fund, joins us now. Mr. Letsoalo, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Now, the RAF has successfully stopped about fraudulent claims valued at over 2.6 billion, and this is in the last 3 financial years. Could you elaborate on the strategies employed by the fund's forensic investigation department?
Well, what we have done, good afternoon and good afternoon to the viewers. What we have done since we have taken over has been to ensure that we've got to put controls in place. One of the most efficient controls that we put in place is what we call our minimum requirements, which means that earlier on you could easily claim without even giving us an accident report form. That has now changed to reflect a situation where you must give us all the requirements for us to be able to make an assessment. So we would know whether there was an accident or not, and where there has not been an accident, of course, we then investigate further what kind of fraud people were trying to perpetrate against us. So that's what we have done over the period. We have empowered our pre-assessment division to make sure that we assess your claim once you bring it to the Road Accident Fund. It doesn't sit in there for a very long time. What the lawyers had been doing over the years was to abuse Section 24(5), which says that if we do not assess a claim and sort of repudiate it or object to it within 60 days, that claim is valid in all respects in law. And those were the kind of claims that we saw that in the past 3 years has been at about 2.6 billion. But what we are saying is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. The more we go into some of these claims that were there in the past, the more we realize that there is a lot of claims that were claimed that were not claimed per se.
So the RAF press release is also mentioning successful arrests and prosecution of various perpetrators, including doctors, attorneys, and even RAF employees. Now, how has the fund collaborated with law enforcement agencies to ensure accountability here?
Well, there are a couple of areas where we open cases of fraud. We work very closely with General Levia's division, which is special investigation, the commercial crimes, and that is the Hawks. And then, of course, there is a proclamation signed by the president, where we work very closely with the SIU to make sure that we investigate any losses that have been pertaining to RAF. So we work very, very closely with them. What we see is that there is no way in which the RAF gets defrauded without the involvement of internal people through syndicates. So those syndicates involve doctors, they involve in other instances members of the traffic fraternity, including the police at times, and of course the doctors, because they are the ones that must assess whether you have been injured and whether that injury has impacted on your life. So they tend to overemphasize the injuries and their impact on the life of a victim. We find that people are, sometimes they are beaten up, sometimes they are injured, they are assaulted, people fall, they crush their bones somehow through fatal accident, even in their own kitchens. One of the cases was where an RAF employee slept within the kitchen and fell and broke a hip bone and came from the same fire.
So it would sound that, especially judging by what you are telling us, that internally the RAF is also attempting to fight corruption, as evident from the suspension and also the resignation of staff members who are involved in these fraudulent activities. But how does the RAF then maintain a culture of integrity?
Well, that's what we've been doing since we have arrived. There are majority of hardworking employees at the RAF. Of course, there would be rotten apples here and there in the main, but they are actually, what we find out is that they are being corrupted by the third parties from outside the RAF. And that's why I'm saying there's been a syndicate. We have worked with this. There are hospitals as well involved that do at times do and go and steal patients from public hospitals, for instance. They work very closely with our medical people that will do referrals, even in cases where referrals are not allowed. So those are things that we've worked on, we've looked at, and of course, people are not happy. And that's why we are saying to South Africans, sometimes when people criticize the RAF, and we are saying we should not be criticized. We are not saying that we should not be criticized, but we're saying that it must be criticism that is meant to build this organization going forward. And in cases like that, we try at all levels to make sure that we identify these culprits and we deal with them accordingly.
That concludes our conversation with Mr. Collins Letsoalo. He's the CEO of the Road Accident Fund.